Yeah, family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. Oh, right. Yeah. Here we go.
The state, so Plato talks about the ideal state. If we were to organize ourselves into a society, into a perfect society, what would that society look like? If we were to create our own utopian society, what would it be like? So first of all, let's step back and examine what the state is for. Plato says that the state exists for helping us to lead a good and virtuous life. So why do we have a state? Simply so that all of us as individuals can lead a more virtuous and good life. There's a moral code that rules all people and all states. So when we talk about an absolute good or absolute justice, there is this good that is over all states and all peoples. And it doesn't matter where you come from or which country you're part of or anything like that, which city you dwell in, it doesn't matter. This good is always the same. So the state must operate within moral law, simply meaning no state is above justice, and no state can decide what's right or wrong. There is this good and the just, all of these things exist, and so states have to abide by that. There's no such thing as deciding what's right or wrong. You know, the good we discern by in its relationship to this idea or this form of the good. So if we follow that, then the principles of justice are the same for every individual and for every state. Justice is justice. Remember, for Plato, these universal definitions are so important. We have these general forms, these ideas of justice, and everyone has to live by these notions. So why does the state exist? According to the Republic, the state exists to serve the wants of people. We all want certain things, and so what happens is, as a result, we come together and we live together. And then as we're living together, what happens is we notice how it is that our city exists for an economic end, and so we start dividing things according to our gifts. And so if Deacon John has a gift for farming, great. Deacon John, you go ahead and farm. And if Terry has a gift for making metal and wood objects, great. Terry will make the plow and the mattock, which is a farming instrument, that Deacon John will be using. Oh, how interesting. So they're both participating in this act, but instead of everyone doing all of their own things, we're starting to share gifts here. Terry is the carpenter and the metal worker, and Deacon John is the one who's out harvesting. Therefore, we need different trades, different people doing different things, but we recognize that in a city, not only do we need different people doing different things, but if we're going to have a luxurious city, that was the expression then we need musicians and poets and tutors and nurses and barbers and cooks, confectioners. We need all these people as well in our city, even though their roles are going to be different. The musician is going to contribute to our society in a different way than the metal worker or the carpenter. So as we have more and more people in our city, what's going to happen? We're going to need more land. In order for us to get more land, to annex more land, what are we going to need? We're going to need the warriors to conquer it, to chase the people away, and for us to win the surrounding areas. And so if we need the warriors, let's call them the guardians of our state who devote themselves to war. What is the modern day analogy? Military, right? And then rulers, the question becomes, now that we have all of these artisans, all these people who have different crafts, and we have these guardians of the state, the warriors, where should we choose the rulers from? Should the rulers come from the working class, or should the rulers come from the warrior class? What do you say? Take the rulers from the workers or from the warriors? So what we're going to have is Plato suggesting that we choose the rulers from the guardians, from the warriors, rather than from the working class, from the artisans. In fact, Plato says the rulers are really the ones who rightly deserve the title guardians. So in fact, in the Republic, he changes his use of terms. He says, let's call the rulers the guardians, And those that we used to call the guardians, those in the military, let's call them the auxiliaries, because they assist the rulers then in maintaining the peace and of guarding the good. So now we have three classes in our ideal state, in the utopia that we're creating. We have the guardians, the rulers. We have the auxiliaries, the military. And we have the artisans. How interesting, though, the bottom class will allow them to have their own property, their own homes and property. But auxiliaries and guardians, be careful. Once you allow them to have their own properties, then they start thinking about their properties more than the good of the state. Follow me? Women, what's the place of women in the ideal state? Should women be relegated to home where they're cooking and taking care of the kids? No. Plato said, women should be trained in all the same subjects as men. Men and women differ only in the part they play in the propagation of the species. Oh, my word. That was a line that was obviously not picked up by the church after the 6th century, right? Men and women differ only in the part they play in the propagation of the species. Plato said, women are naturally not as strong as men. If we were to arm wrestle one another, men would tend to win out in that respect. But women should not be excluded from any area, even from war or from serving as guardians or rulers of the people. Women should be capable of all that. In fact, women, after they've born children, if they want to go off and serve in the military and serve in war and serve as auxiliaries, great. The marriage of guardians, the rulers, and auxiliaries, yikes. This is something that Plato said we should control that. The artisans, we're not going to worry so much about the artisans, but we want to make sure that we have a perfect ruling class over this people, which simply means that we need to control their marriages, make sure that the marriages are strictly arranged with a view toward efficient discharge of duties and the obtaining of the best possible offspring, because out of those two classes are going to come the rulers. Who should determine how many children you have or when you have them? The magistrates. If you're part of those two upper classes, then the magistrates should be controlling all of these decisions, said Plato, such that children born outside of prescribed limits or outside of the prescribed time should be put out of the way. Yikes. This is simply Plato imagining in the ideal world, if I could create the ideal world, the utopia, then how would we create it? And he's trying to think rationally through what some of this would mean. He says children of guardians and auxiliaries and these upper classes would be raised in a state nursery, so that, it would free up the women. Think about that for a moment. Think of how nice that would be, right? Put the kids into the state nursery if you're part of the upper ruling classes. Children should not be taught legends of gods who indulge in gross immorality or who take various forms, who are like change how they look, or who break oaths and treaties. No, any of those stories, children should not be taught those stories of gods. Rather, and also the children of guardians and auxiliaries not suited to those classes should be relegated to the artisan class. So if you have a child and he or she is not behaving as a person in our classes should behave, got good news, they can be part of the artisan class, right? They can be a cobbler or a cook or any number of things that we can come up with for them that are not part of the ruling or military classes. Education of the true and good is necessary, so we need various philosophers who are teaching our children and educating them, leading them toward a knowledge of the forms, so they can in turn be good leaders and rulers. Poets, we said before that poets can be dangerous. Why would Plato write a book against poets and rhapsodists? Because poets can be dangerous, and because you know how it is. Poets come up with charming words, but before you know it, poets are talking about these gods who are indulging in gross immorality, or who are breaking oaths and treaties or different things. We've got to make sure that our poets and those who are telling the tales of our people are doing it in such a way that it's under strict state authority, because the charm of their words can obscure poison. Yikes, state control of the arts. Gymnastics and care of the body are important, especially for warrior athletes who should be like wakeful dogs. So the gymnasiums are going to be important in classical Greece, a way to train the body, healthy mind, healthy body. Atheists and heretics are to be punished. If you do it for the first time, if you're just a heretic or renouncing the gods for the first time, then you just get 5 years in the house of correction, during which time you get visits from the nocturnal council so they can instruct you in the errors of your ways. So first offense as a heretic or an atheist is simply 5 years. After that, the second offense is death. Democracy is such a dangerous thing. People in the United States of America don't realize this. Plato was in tune with this. What did Plato believe in that respect? He believed, for instance, that imagine that we're all on a ship. Okay, so now we have to choose a captain for our ship. How are we going to choose that captain? The one who's like tallest and strongest? Careful. He says, if the captain is taller and stronger than anyone else, but is a little deaf, what? Or is a little short-sighted and can't see as well, then the entire ship of the state is in trouble. In order to be the captain of the ship, special knowledge is required, right? In office, we do it all the time. We elect people who have no idea what they're getting into until they're into it. And then what happens? They learn the ropes of that office and they figure out, okay, how to start dealing with, what levers they can pull and how to exercise that position. And what do? We elect someone else into that position. So special knowledge is required for the right guidance of the ship of state. Ideally, we would have a philosopher king, Plato thought, who knows the direction in which the ship should be going and who can help to get us through the storms. Right? The philosopher king is the one who knows where we should be going and who can help to steer us in that direction. So we're going to have a philosopher king. What should we do to train people to be the philosopher king? Candidates for the philosopher king should be sound in limb and mind, and they should be sound in virtue by age 30. So let's give them the first 30 years of their life to make sure that they're strong and healthy and virtuous. And if by age 30 they're proven to be that, then we let them study dialect for 5 years. After that, let them do military service or other public offices for 15 years. How old does that mean they'll be? 50. So no one should study philosophy until they are at least 50 years old. If anyone in this room is younger than 50, there is the door. So we don't study philosophy until we're 50 years old. For the philosopher king, then, when they turn 50, philosophy is their chief pursuit, but they also need to rule for the public good. How many people should be involved in government? Lots of people. No great numbers of persons, whoever they may be, can have political knowledge or order a state wisely. But instead, Plato said, true government is found in a small body or in an individual. The ideal state will consist of 5,040 individuals or households. Did you read that in the book? Where did he come up with the number 5,040? He said because that number has 59 divisors, can be divided by 59 different numbers, so that if we have to divide ourselves for whatever reasons, whether it's for going to war, whether it's for taxes, whether it's for various contractual dealings, we have 59 different ways we can divide ourselves as 5,040 people. How's that for a deal? Communism is ideal, but if the common citizens, the artisans, possess houses and land, that's a second best option. Embezzlement of public funds, If you take public funds or property, it's punishable by death if you're a citizen. Why? Because if you've received a state education and you still did this, you stole public funds or property, then that's incurable. We have given you a state education. If we've educated you and you're still doing it, then that's punishable by death. If you're a foreigner and we haven't educated you, well then that's curable. We might be able to cure you. But if you're a citizen who's gotten the benefit of our state education, then you know better. No one can travel abroad without sanction or before the age of 40. So if you want to go to a foreign land, a foreign place, that's great. 2 requirements. You have to be at least 40 years old, and 2, you have to have the permission of the state. And when you return, you have to teach the young that the institutions of other states are inferior to our own institutions. Right? When foreigners come to our land, they shouldn't be allowed to mix with citizens. Finally, a note on war. War is a natural state. War simply is in this world. But war should only be pursued for the sake of peace. How interesting. So that's Plato's thoughts on the ideal state. Just one man's thought on how it is that we might order society. But what's interesting is how it is that people will read his words and then be reacting to it about how it is that they agree or disagree with the different ideas that Plato set forth. Yikes, Janie says.
Yikes.
How interesting, I mean, the vision of women that he sets forth is, wow, actually quite liberating. The only difference between men and women is the role they play in procreation and having babies, right? That's the only difference between men and women. If women want to be part of the ruling class or to go off to war, women should be able to do that.